Now, if I can just tell you how the questions are going to work, and I'd like to take chair's privilege and ask the first question. But we'll take 2 questions at a time. I'd ask you to keep your questions short and succinct. We will appreciate brief, pithy observations, not 5-minute monologues. Otherwise, I will go all David Dimbleby on you. My first question relates to something Benjamin said around capability and different levels of capability of thinking. Is there an issue about growth mindset or fixed mindset in this then?
I mean, I'm still slightly on the fence about this because I do find this concept that people have different levels of mental capability in this kind of deep systemic way to be quite problematic and elitist. It's certainly true that you can study and grasp and use many of the methods or ideas of systems thinking in a very linear way, ironically. And we get a lot of experts in systems thinking, and I think that's perhaps where I can come to land on your question. An expert mindset is not conducive. A learning mindset definitely is. The people I look for to work with as leaders in organisations who might want to make a systemic change across their whole organisation, which is what I'm foolishly in the business of looking for these days, are people who either have had deeply traumatic, life-changing events thrust upon them and have been forced to change, to realise at certain stages that their model of the world has broken down and readapt and broadened their way of thinking about the world. And there's a positive side, but I seem strangely to have forgotten what the positive alternative is. It may come back to me. But actually, people tend to either make the leap themselves in very fortuitous circumstances, or be placed in the right kind of learning environment, which is even rarer, or be forced into stretching their thinking by various crises, which mean that they have to change the way that they think. So I think there's 2 dimensions to it. One is how do you shift up a level over a long period of your life and be able to think of things differently. Another one is, are you interested in continually learning and challenging yourself, or are you thinking that you are an expert and you're confident in your understanding of the world and it's sufficient for you? Sorry, that was a very long answer of a very difficult subject. Ray, please help.
Very good, thank you.
I think we may have a comment from the audience.
Anything to offer on that?
Oh, yeah,
so,
I've got a couple. Do you want me to, or do you want to take some more questions?
We'll take the panel and then we'll come to questions.
As a consultant, I see it really my job as a kind of an artisan, as a solve the problem. So clients come along, they have a problem. Your job is not to inflict your way of thinking on them, it's to help them solve the problem. Sometimes clients just want an answer and they don't give a stuff how you arrived at it. Sometimes clients actually want to understand that there is something behind it, and sometimes they want you to do a brain transplant. And that's fine. The trick for me is not doing a brain transplant on the people who just wanted an answer to how to manufacture better, you know. So I don't see it as ethical, actually, to try and impose a different way of thinking on people if that's not what they want. We do methodology, and we go, you know, there's a sort of progression from concept to methodology to method, and we go down that track because it makes it easier to pick up and use. And to Ben's point from when he did his 6 minutes, you know, big consultancies in particular want stuff that they can take kids out of college and train them in and they can do it. And that requires method. And that's kind of the conventional wisdom. My experience on this is slightly coloured by doing an experiment with a bunch of MBA students. So I was teaching a course at Manchester Business School, and at fag end of the second, it was 1 week module on systems thinking. Fag end of the second day, when I'd been doing some really difficult stuff with them, we had an extra quarter of an hour and I slipped in an exercise, which was look at the then recent financial crisis. This was 2010, 2012, something like that. And apply, I gave them 5 systems laws, And I said, apply these to the financial crisis and see what they tell you about it. You've got 15 minutes. And they came back, I mean, none of them, well, one of them was an economist, but they came back with really impressive explanations for how the crisis had happened, how the crisis had to happen. It didn't have to happen then, but it was inevitable it was going to happen. And it was inevitable it was going to happen again. And this is how the laws applied to that, and this is how it showed it. So even at the raw level of those basic systems laws, kids who with basically no training in systems at all could use those to unpick a really, really difficult problem. When Her Majesty the Queen asked whatever the Institute of Economists the same question, they couldn't come back with an answer. These kids did it in 15 minutes. So, you know, I tend to think that people can be a hell of a lot better at this than we tend to give them credit for, given half a chance. But it's not our job to force it down their throats.
Before I take the questions from Ray and Graham and open it up to the floor, Angus, have you got any thoughts on that? And just building on something Patrick said, is there then a case where the experts, and Benjamin made the comment about the difference between a learning mindset and an expert mindset, would we have survived the global crash if we'd have been run by MBA students rather than too many overeducated experts who overthought everything?
Well, it depends how far through their MBA program they got.
Perfect answer, thank you. Right, I am now going to open you up to the floor. If you could tell us your name, your organisation and your question, please. And Ray, I know you're dying to ask something. So.
Well, merely to pick up on the question that you asked, because it was an interesting question. I'm Ray Ison, I'm Professor of Systems at the Open University. I've been there for a considerable period of time. I guess my response to this question was that we've been teaching systems at the Open University since virtually the early 1970s. And we have if you like, an experiential rule of thumb answer to your question. And that is that roughly 30% of our students find our systems teaching liberating because at long last they have concepts that explains how they experience the world and enables them to be more confident about how they engage in the world. For another 30%, it's really a third, it's an aha moment. It's a really life-transforming moment for them. And for another third, it's a really rejection. It's an affront to their identity or their commitment to their own causality and modes of thinking. So that's roughly the sorts of ways I guess we experience it at the Open University. But to come back to the last point about MBAs, my view is that most MBAs trivialise systems because they teach it extremely instrumentally and they don't engage with the thinking that lays behind the instrumentalised thinking.
I think there's a fundamental problem with the way we think, and it goes back to the last 400 years of science. And it's been brilliant at solving certain kinds of problems, which is the conversation about analytical chemistry. We've been brilliant at breaking the world down into little bits. And we're excellent at understanding little bits. And we've got incredible knowledge about those mechanisms at little bits. But also, as long as we only treat things at a quantitative level, and in such a way that we regard everything that's really qualitative and important in life, like how we feel about things, as subjective and unimportant. So this is absolutely fantastic for building a railway or an internet network. But in terms of solving the kinds of social problems and ecological problems and civil problems that we have today, it doesn't solve them because the world doesn't live in little bits, and it doesn't live in dead things. It lives in living things that are incredibly interconnected. And I build on what Patrick was saying. You know, it's kind of easy to break a bicycle down and put it together again. It's very tough to break a frog down and put it together again. So we need an utterly different way of thinking if we are to solve the problems that we are confronted with in the 21st century. I went to Oxford, and by the time I'd finished at Oxford, I couldn't think except in words. I couldn't make, as a child, I was imaginative. If I read a book, I pictured everything I read. By the time I was finished at Oxford, I couldn't imagine a thing. The world just consisted of words. And if you're not careful, you end up turning those words into realities. And so you go into organizations and they're full of words being argued about. And these words are dislocated from reality. We need a different kind of thinking. Personally, I've had to spend a lifetime learning how to think again. And I don't want the next generation of children to go through it.
Yes, sir.
Karl Szafczyński, professor at the University of Silesia School of Management in Poland. I very much enjoyed the panel's introduction to the topic. It's been at quite an abstract level. I wonder if one or more panel members could give us a case study of the application of systems thinking in to a practical consultancy problem, please.
What sort of case would you like?
Well, a successful one.
Volunteer as well.
So, but that's the last speaker who was talking about working with a technology organisation. What were the goals of what you were trying to achieve? How did you achieve them, and what were the outcomes from what you did? There should be a case study there.
Right. So there are...
And was it a successful one to meet the other criteria of the case study?
There are many stories that could be told, but if I just pick up this particular one, the issue is, and I'm afraid I have to keep every detail that I possibly can secret, or at least I have to conceal the evidence. So the situation is we have a large technology company, and it is in all over the world, and it's keen to try and sell more, like every other organization. So it has a whole structure of investigating how the sales force is doing around the world, and layers of management that are investigating that and generating forecasts. They need those forecasts, on the one hand, in order to be able to predict accurately for financial analysts how this company is going to perform, so that they know whether they have to screw something around the organization to meet its financial targets, or whether they will in fact reach them. They also need this information in order to be able to screw the salespeople to bring in business earlier. So every time that the information that's revealed is that the sale is going to take place next month, not this month, then the question is, how do you make it this month? And if it's going to happen next week, how do you make it happen this week? Because that's about booking business earlier. The result of this process is that it becomes dysfunctional for the sales force. It also becomes dysfunctional as an experience for the customer. And as a result, that the organization gets from the sales force concealed, twisted, manipulated evidence about what they're doing. They are very careful about what information they reveal. Thus, the information that's actually obtained by the financial department is not accurate enough, as a result of which they actually don't use it, but they construct their own models and manipulate it in order to be able to present to the financial analysts what they think is going to happen. Therefore, this particular exercise from that point of view is utterly pointless, extremely expensive, and time-consuming. So if you could just eliminate most of that and substitute a single alternative measure, and instead of saying...
Can I say that any management consultancy that measures its time and resources by utilisation and project recovery is falling into exactly the same trap and replicating exactly that same model of waste and frustration and stress. So, excuse me.
So it's very expensive. So obviously you still want to know, well, who are you doing business with and what's going on? But if you could add in another measure, how much value is the work that you think you're going to do with this client going to generate for the client? How much value do you think that does the client think that we are going to generate for them? What we're interested in is not just how much sales revenue will we get, but how much as a result of that can we quantify the value for the client. and you build that capability in, you generate sales a lot easier, you've got better evidence to help you with future selling. The customer loves what you're doing, the sales force loves what you're doing, and everybody, and when you decide to do that, everybody just accepts it, and it's like a virus that spreads through the organization.
Can I give you a couple? So one's a fairly old-fashioned manufacturing example. Engineering, so making stuff, which is nice. I mean, there's something real there. Management team that really didn't understand how stuff went through the factory and the complexity of that. Remodelled that. We put up productivity within a week by 40%, just by changing the organisational structure. So we didn't change the plant layout, we didn't retrain people, we didn't change the kit. We just changed the organisation. Now you could have got that result just by applying the formula. So there are different models you can use in manufacturing situations, and any consultant could have gone, oh, do that. The trouble is that the do that solution, which was the right solution, you don't actually know whether it's going to work or not. So sometimes it works and sometimes it makes the company go bankrupt, and I've seen both. What the systems approaches give you is a way of understanding when it's going to work, when it's not going to work. Yeah? So that's 40% up, uplift in productivity in the week, not bad. We did it twice in the same different departments. Different one, IT company. So that's metal bashing. IT company stuck on where they were going, flatline for 3 years. Small end of big IT company. We restructured them. So they were sort of wandering in the wilderness. They were okay, they're making tons of money, but they doubled the workforce without actually increasing revenues. Profits have obviously gone down because the costs have gone up. They hadn't introduced any significant new products. Restructured that, and with just over half the staff, one division put up the total revenue by 20% in 9 months. And another division, which was doing the R&D stuff, brought a new breakthrough product to market. They've just brought it to market. And they've got another division doing the long-term development stuff. So they've been wallowing financially for 3 years. They've been wallowing for 18 months on where they go and how do they sort this out. And we sorted that out in about 2 days. It took them 9 months to get a 20% uplift, but it's hard numbers.
If I can jump in as well, I think this is a really important question, because this is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? How can we make money from this? And by the way, I'm not bitter about the utilisation and recovery metrics of PwC. I'll have you know, because I managed to freak the system extremely effectively. The leave year was not coincident with the utilisation year, which is all part of their making it difficult to leave. So in a year where I was going for promotion, I regularly got 115% recovery because I didn't take any leave whatsoever. It's just the year before and year after were terrible. There's a benefit to seeing systems.
Is that benefit called fiddling statistics?
Look, it's their game. I was only playing it better. And that's what salespeople do. But same thing. So I'm going to try and really quickly give 2 examples. One is which we're working on with mixed success. One is a city council in the UK, and one is, let's say, a transport infrastructure organisation in Australia. And in each of those, we're working with them in 3 overlapping circles, if you like. The first is getting them to reconceptualise what a service is. So getting them to move from thinking about the purpose of this service is to get people to throw away waste in the cheapest possible way for the city council, to the purpose of this service is to achieve zero waste in this city. And actually think about the service not as a bunch of people and resources, not a resource-based view, but what is the service that we are, how do we meet citizen purpose with positive outcomes? Whether that's us doing things, somebody else doing things, the citizens themselves doing things, or just helping each other, etc., etc., etc. The second level is getting them to think about the impact that they are individually having as leaders in their organisation and their own personal development. And the third level is very simple disciplines which are helping them to create a more positive experience for the people in the organisation, which are getting clear about purpose and context and working out possibilities before they assign tasks. Negotiating and assigning tasks where people are clear about their accountabilities, they have the authority, they have the specification of what good looks like, and they have the authority to go off and do it and the resources to do it as well. That creates a positive result, that creates a better relationship, that builds things over time. Really, really very, very simple stuff. And where it's falling down is where we don't get the join between those three domains right, and where the leaders can't see the benefit of doing change, thinking about services in a different way, because they are still stuck in, well, that's all very well, but we've got to save, and it's genuinely the case, they've got to save £48 million within the next financial year. So hadn't we better just take a big bit of the system, put boundaries around it, take out 15% of the budget, do a reorganisation, and then find business processes that will deliver the best possible outcomes with that reduced resource. And that is what's undermining, in one of these cases, the whole damn thing, because they're not actually thinking systemically about that part of the organisation. They buy all the rest, but we haven't quite got them over the line in putting it all together into one picture, if that makes sense.